Earlier this morning, I had a chance to sit down with Governor Rick Snyder and talk a little bit about some of the 21st Century Commission reports that just came out on the economy, also infrastructure and education, which came out earlier in the year. We also had a chance to talk about some of the things that are going on in Lansing, legislation about teacher pensions, and a few more things. Go ahead and take a look. And joining us now is Michigan Governor Rick Snyder. Governor Snyder, it's good to see you.
Yeah, it's great to be with you again.
It's a lot of energy up here at the Mackinac Policy Conference this year, it feels.
Yeah, there is. And the Chamber's done a great job of their themes for this conference. Restoring civility, getting connected through technology, and the whole issue about economic opportunity. These are critically important issues, and the dialogue's been great.
You know, talking about critically important issues, finally this week it released the last 21st Century Commission report that you've been working on. And so there was one released on infrastructure in the fall, and then earlier this spring on education, and now this week on the economy. Do you finally feel that you have some kind of blueprint or the roadmap of where Michigan needs to be and actual things that we can accomplish and get done in the near term?
Yeah, Christy, that was one of the great parts of this. The economy was really the one to bring the other pieces together, because to have a strong economy, you need infrastructure and education. So they all fit together, they came together. This was done by a broad base of Michiganders, no partisanship involved. And it was to really say, let's stop thinking too short term. Let's think about the next couple generations and the world that we're facing and the opportunities and threats that we may have. And so I think they did a great job of pulling that all together, because it's not about having an answer for everything, but what are longer term things and what are actionable items, and we've already started on some of them. A great illustration on infrastructure. We already launched the integrated asset management pilot, which is about how do we get water and sewer people to work with road people, to work with our utilities, and coordinate that work. That can save a fortune in terms of resources because we need to invest more. Education, about competency-based learning, about saying how do you get more experiential kind of learning put in place. And we've got great things outside the classroom, but we need to bring more of those in the classroom. Things like FIRST Robotics, Square One, fabulous programs. And then on the economic front, what are some of these themes? And a couple of things that stood out. The need for broadband, particularly in rural parts of Michigan. It's a big economic opportunity because it's a great lifestyle. Who wouldn't want to live on the shorelines of one of the Great Lakes or one of our inland lakes? But if you don't have connectivity, economically, you probably can't make it happen.
I want to talk a little bit about the resource, because it always seems like it comes down to a little bit of money and what it takes to get things done. And when you're looking at infrastructure, $4 billion that we would need to pump into our infrastructure in the state. Where is maybe the political will to start set aside some of that money to get some of that work done? Yeah,
well, the good part is we'd started. I mean, if you look at what we did with the road funding package or transportation package, we got to $1.2 billion already. And the thing is when you talk about a $4 billion number, and we do need to do even more than the 1.2, but you break it down into more bite-sized pieces. If you just talk about a huge number and say we got to get from 0 to 4 billion,
everyone will shut down and no one will be able to do anything.
You don't get there. So you have to start saying, okay, now let's put it in a rational fashion. So we've got 1.2 billion more for roads. For water and sewer, again, quite often that would be through fees and assessments in the water system or with sewer fees. So is there something to be done there? Broadband. Again, those are public-private partnerships quite often. But they're all steps that if you start adding that all up, you can get to that big number.
Let's talk about education. One of the things that came out of the commission report was talking about governance and possibly changing the way things are set up or who reports to who, specifically looking at the Michigan Department of Education and the elected school board, state school board that we have. Are there any steps being taken to change that structure? Is it something that would be appointed by you or merging things so the State School Reform Office is maybe working more in tandem with the Department of Education?
Yeah, so again, there's discussions about the school reform activity and the Michigan Department of Education. The other part of that is what's the right model to help schools in need? And I think there's a partnership model that's a better answer out there, and we can learn from that. With respect to the elected versus appointed board, that's a constitutional question. And so I think that's a fair question we should be talking about. To put, in terms though, I didn't put that on my top of my list to work on because that would be a 2018 ballot question. So there's still time to look at that, but there's some near-term activities, like I mentioned, that we're already working on.
All right, let's talk a little bit about teachers and their pensions and the questions that are swirling around right now with the legislature. They're looking at changing the system from the hybrid system that we have right now to a 401k type system for new hires. You don't agree with that. Where is the breakdown between communication?
Well, what I'd say is I have a different perspective because it costs us more money. And the real cost is significant. You're talking billions of dollars to our taxpayers. The other thing is what problem are we trying to solve? And one of the issues that is we should all be discussing that is fair to solve is, can we have less risk to our taxpayers, and can we have less risk to the people in the program because they'll know the program's going to be there? I think there are some intermediate steps that we can look at to bring down the risk. For example, the investment return assumptions, how we actually work with the school districts on the mechanisms. These are not exciting things, but they can address similar kind of questions without the need to close the plan and find hundreds of millions of dollars a year. Mm-hmm. So that's what I'd like to have the discussion on, is let's just not jump to conclusions. Let's talk about what are the risks, the problems we're trying to solve, what are the choices to do that, and is there a menu of those things to make it better? Because we made huge reforms in 2012. We made big steps forward there, and so when people talk about the system falling apart, that's not accurate. We've done a lot of good things, we can do even better. And so let's do it in an incremental, thoughtful fashion.
Last question for you. Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan took the stage up here yesterday, and he hinted around, and there are reports out today, that he's interested in bringing back the idea of a Detroit Education Commission, and that would need some help from Lansing. Do you agree with having that kind of commission? Would you support that if he tries to bring that back around?
Yeah, well, I supported it before, so I would continue to support that concept. I think from a legislative point of view, it's a challenging one because we had a difficult time last time on that particular issue. But the concept was a good one in terms of helping manage a market to make sure we got the right number of seats, because we have too many seats for how many kids there are. And so that's made it more challenging, and let's get the highest quality schools, whether they're traditional public schools or charter schools. Let's raise the bar of expectations.
All right, well, I'm sorry, one last thing. Yeah. Can you give us an update on where people are in Flint right now? Because we know that they're still drinking out of filtered waters, and there's still this charge to try to start replacing pipes.
Yeah, well, the water quality in terms of the test results has been very good. I mean, the standard's been 15 parts per billion. The most recent testing was at 6. So it's as good or better in terms of test results as many communities in our country. The filters are largely there because of the pipe replacement. We want to, out of abundance of caution, to say as you're replacing pipes, you're disrupting the ground, and you could be causing particles to get released. Mm-hmm. And the pipe replacement is coming along. In addition, we've got good long-term resources to strengthen the entire Flint water system. And there's a good long-term plan for water. That's before the city council now, and I hope that gets approved. In addition, we're doing a lot of great things in education, nutritional programs, job creation programs to strengthen Flint, because Flint had many challenges prior to the water issue. Let's make Flint even better and stronger as we go through this process, and it's a healing process.
Okay, Governor Snyder, thanks so much for joining me. It's good to see you. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thanks. Great to be with you.
Okay, take care.